How do we measure it? And what are the assumptions that drive it? So should be an interesting conversation, but before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, all your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub your hands together, feeling the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, and the tickling and tingling when you stop, and allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, Rosalind. Great to have you here with us this morning. Good morning to everybody else who's joining us. So today we're talking about progress. And, we've talked about more and sufficiency and enough. And I think that progress is a slippery slope that can be connected with all of that striving for more. But that said, there is something to be said about seeing progress. And so what actually is progress? What is it? So in thinking about it, we don't have progress unless we have an objective or an intention or a goal. And I'm using all those things, even though they're not synonymous in my mind anyway. Unless you have an intention, goal, or outcome in mind, right? Because you're measuring change, you're measuring movement toward that, in the fulfillment of that intention or goal or objective. Good morning, Robin. Welcome. It's great to have you here with us this morning for our conversation about progress. So how this conversation arose for me to bring to you this morning is actually noticing results in my body, changes in my body as I've been going to the gym, noticing subtle changes and recognizing that I was defining that as progress. And then looking at, well, what makes it progress? And then kind of deconstructing to recognize, well, I have some intentions about my body, that I want strength, that I want definition, that I'm working toward that. And being able to see evidence. I guess progress is also evidence-based feedback, right? That something is changing, that something is being effective. So when in personal growth sorts of areas we see progress, it can be very motivating and stimulating, gratifying, right? And it can be something that encourages us to continue along the path that we're following, right? And when we don't see progress, when we don't get that feedback, because it is kind of a feedback, is it working? Is it not working? when we don't get that feedback, it's easy to get disenchanted, frustrated, unmotivated, demotivated. So I think it's very interesting, because if you've been with me for any while, you know that I have this thing about goals and objectives, because they're fixed and they're time bound, and there's either success or failure around them, right? But intentions for me, and this is just a personal thing, I mean, it's not like it's truth or the way it should be, but for me, intention is more forgiving. Intention is alive. I can redirect it. I can dance with it more readily. Robin says, ditto. I do stretching while listening in the morning, noticing changes also. So congratulations, Robin. How cool is that, right? Like when you notice changes, when you notice, oh my gosh, I feel more present in my body. I feel stronger in my body. I notice that there's more contour, or that I'm more limber. All those things, noticing those changes it's rewarding. And it's not like a reward, it's like an ongoing action of rewarding. So there's this living interchange between what we're doing or where we're putting our attention, that then feeds back to us to let us know if we are proceeding in the direction that we're intending to go. All of that said, I look at our technologies and what has been considered progress, right? Like the industrialization of our civilization is typically defined as progress. And so in particularly that kind of example, it makes me recognize the necessity to step back and say, what are the metrics? What are the values? What are the intentions that we are setting for ourselves toward which we're defining progress? And so, for example, in a job or in a business, let's say you have your own business and you're building that business, and you're bringing in more income, it may be that that is something that you would define as progress. However, if you're building that income at the expense of lifestyle and relationships and self-care and stress and comfort, or what, at the expense of comfort in your life, is that progress? And we have certain cultural predispositions to what we define as progress, right? Like money, for one, is a big one that we say, oh, well, we're making progress toward our financial goals. And in the fulfillment of that, whatever we need to do to get toward that goal, we might be making sacrifices that don't jive with the value of the money that's being created. I mean, there's a point beyond enough, and I don't mean sparse scarcity enough. I mean like true enough, where it's excess and there's burden that's attached to it that is not commensurate with the cost, the personal cost of something. So Rosalind says linear path, always requires a comparison. Path to where? Yes, metrics. How is it measured? I think that this is where we get lost so often. Thank you for that, Rosalind. I think we so often get lost in not questioning the metrics, not questioning the intention itself, because oftentimes the intention itself is driven by values that may not be in alignment with ourselves. And I don't know why this came to mind. It's not part of my life particularly, but say, like saving up for a designer bag. I remember someone telling me about spending I don't know, something like $1,800 on a designer bag. And it's kind of so out of my wheelhouse, so inconceivable to me, actually. But what is the priority that motivates that kind of objective and progress toward that kind of objective? What is the value structure? What is it based on? Is it something that is in alignment with ourselves? Like if we're holding that value, if we're holding that objective and we're making progress towards saving for that thing, what's the context for the whole thing? Do we question that? Or are we wrapped up in some kind of social I'm trying to think of the right word, some kind of social context that has us adopting values that aren't necessarily our own and aren't necessarily in alignment with the things that truly are meaningful to us personally. So Robin says gain. Exactly, Robin. What we're talking about there is more, right? And really what that is representative of is externalities and valuing ourselves based on externalities. How much we have, how much we make, who we know, how deep our meditation is, like valuing, making our self-worth contingent upon these external measures. Whereas, for instance, going back to the working out thing, and seeing changes in our bodies, it may be that the objectives for our bodies are also socially determined. Socially, we are taught to have a certain value for what fitness means or looks like. And so, in my experience of progress, it may be toward this model that is socially enculturated and may not be accurate. However, if I check in with myself, I know that my body feels better when I have a level of fitness. I think the body image thing is a really important conversation. Maybe we can have a conversation one day just about that, because that's something that so many of us struggle with. And so much of it is culturally conditioned. I mean, there were other eras when it was very fashionable to be rather rotund, if not plumpy, and and big, and this culture is really very very youth and thin biased. And it's ironic because our population and our food supply, we're bigger generally, and so there's this striving to be small somehow, to be physically small. We have this paradigm of sort of athleticism or muscularity that is propagated, and we have all kinds of beliefs that are shared about that, like that's what healthy is. And I don't know, and I think that I too am subject to those biases, that I've bought into a lot of that programming. We're not really taught to feel into our own wellness and guide our self perception based on those internal feedback mechanisms, as much as measuring ourselves against the externals and what we're conditioned to. So that's a really interesting thing to talk about, I think. So Rosalind says, progress seems like it surrounds a limited resource. I have to think about that. And then, for example, what is the best use of groundwater? Who has priority to benefit access to it? What makes those decisions? Who makes those decisions? So that's a really interesting conversation. I don't know that I'm feeling into that it's necessarily progress, but the answer that comes to me in response to your question about groundwater is that right now who makes the decision is those organizations that can lobby for ownership, and big companies like Nestle and Pepsi that are stealing all the groundwater. They're paying some nominal fee for it, but they're stealing water, in my opinion. And it's my opinion alone, well, I'm not the only one that has that opinion, but I'm not saying it's fact. They're legally getting away with taking this resource that is what I consider to be a human resource, a natural resource that shouldn't be owned. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation, but how do we talk about progress? Maybe we talk about progress in that regard. We're going to talk about progress as it relates to our personal values, right? So if there is some legislation that starts to limit corporate consumption of these essential resources, I personally would consider that progress. I personally would consider it progress when we are able to stop the development of more pipelines or fracking. I would consider that progress. There are other people that would consider additional fracking facilities and more oil and fossil fuel production to be progress. So I'm not neutral about it by any means, and nor are people on the other side of the conversation, I guess. But what is defining progress is the context and the values that we apply to circumstance or to our assessment of circumstance. It's all about context and perspective, just like pretty much everything else, right? So Robin says, you came with nothing, you leave with nothing, although your personal legacy of your walk and the people you came in contact with, along with the blessings of goodwill, so many have become materialists. This may apply to this conversation. Everyone has a different opinion with each scenario. So, you know what, Robin, this is, you bring up a really interesting point, saying you come with nothing, you leave with nothing. And I would love to have that conversation too. I think that could be a really wonderful conversation, because I don't believe necessarily that you come with nothing. I don't believe that we come, and this isn't my belief, and it's a hypothesis, may or may not be true. I'm not putting it forward as this is the way it is, but I believe that we come with our essence, that we come with our beingness, and that we come with all kinds of unexpressed potential, individually, uniquely. And as we live our lives, we move through expression of that that potential may or may not get fulfilled, or it may get fulfilled to varying degrees. And we leave with the experience of having lived. So in terms of materiality, also we come into our material circumstances. So that's a wide spectrum of experience for different people. So I am working with the notion that this is in some way, shape, or form a purposeful experience. That the universe is purposeful in some way, shape, or form that I don't imagine I'll ever grasp. But that's a baseline assumption that I'm working with and playing with, and certainly it's not universally held, but it yeah. So that's maybe another way to be able to measure progress, if we have that kind of contextual reference point. Not everybody, obviously that's not a universally held notion, but it's what I'm playing with. It works for me to give me context in my life. And Robin says, you're correct. My thoughts are material items with the physical body. All have gifts we come with. Thank you for that. I agree. We come with the opportunity for experience at the very least, right? Like being here, that is by definition an opportunity for experience. We can't not experience. We can have different relationships to that experience, but experience is a given, and we come with certain capacities to experience in whatever ways we do. We talk about our sensual experience. We start every day with our rubbing our hands together meditation to experience our physicalness, and we have very wide-ranging experiences of what that is and how we interface with the world through those sensate capacities. So yeah, potential. And actually, again, getting back to progress, if we think we know what our potential is, then we might be measuring our progress against that. The thing about doing that is that we set ourselves up for this success and failure paradox and polarity. And that's one of the potential pitfalls of this whole notion of progress, right? That will say, well, we're not making progress, we're regressing, or we failed. And the thing is, it's a continuum, and oftentimes it's the quote unquote regressions that actually lead us to a greater expansion than had we made some kind of linear progress. So I guess the question, the thing that I operate from pretty much is question everything, like look at what's underlying that. What's the motivator that is driving a certain judgment or a certain interpretation? Because progress, again, it's an interpretation, it's a value interpretation. So Robin says, something to think about, so many opportunities available to have additional growth. 100%. And so growth for me is a primary metric. So whatever the circumstance, whether I would deem it progress or regression, I always look at how can this contribute to my growth? And then it's always progress, right? Or not. Rosalind says, maybe require firstly to have a connection to an understanding of who am I? Who am I is an ongoing fluid experience, at least in my world. So I think that being engaged in the process of who am I, rather than who am I being a static quantity or a known quantity. The who am I is process of continually unfolding and a continual discovery. The best who am I answer that I've yet come up with for myself anyway is I am life expressing itself through this unique vehicle. Because it's always ever changing. It's, I can say I am a daughter, but is that my essence? No, it's a role I play, or it's a status of some sort. So Robin says failures are lessons. 100%. And they're only failures if we say so. And if the failure is a lesson, then is it really a failure? Right? I'm not one to believe in failure, other than as a temporary state, perhaps, like a feeling state. Robin says, awesome words. Thank you. So I think we get to recognize how contextualized our knowing is, our activities are. Another way to say that is how automatic so much of it is. Rosalind says we're all evolving. I agree, whether we believe it or not. I agree with you. That evolution may not look the way we think it should look. So with that, we'll call it a morning. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live each weekday morning here on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel at 9 a.m. Eastern. And I invite you to check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network and Enlightened World Living. And it's movie night. So for Sustainability Now, which is my podcast. Good morning, Dido. Welcome. Great to have you here with us this morning. So it's my podcast that I I have with Scott Billy. And I want to invite you to check it out tonight. We are showing an amazing presentation / interview by Janine Benyus, who is one of the foremost proponents of biomimicry. And she talks about the absolute spectacular, awe-inspiring brilliance of nature and how we can learn from that to create a lifestyle, to create products and systems that mimic, learn from nature's brilliance. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much, Dido. I appreciate your listing that. If we go, the link you want to go to register for our movie night, you'll get a notification around 6:30 Eastern this evening that'll give you a registration link. So go to sustainabilitynow.global and sign up for our email, and then you'll get notification of tonight's movie night. But it's a wonderful, wonderful talk. And then we hang out and have conversation afterwards. So I think you definitely want to check it out. All right, that's it. Until next time, so much love to you.